Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention? The program will begin shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention? The program will begin shortly.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. welcome to the first session of the final day of the 5th annual meeting of the Asian Population Association. I am Jin Yang, professor at the National University of Singapore. I will serve as the moderator 1 for this session, and the moderator number 2 would be Ms. Sari Kisitiana. Sari is here. Both of us will be serving as moderators. Today's session is called Fertility Determinants. And since there are only 3 papers in this session, each of the presenters will will have a longer time for their presentation. So each of them, please take about 20 minutes for your presentation. Okay. Sari, do you want to say greetings first before we start?
Sure, Jen, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sari. I'm a researcher from National Population and Family Planning of Indonesia. So Jen, let me add several things for the instruction. So since we will have 20 minutes to present the abstract, so there will be a notification sound to remind the presenter twice, 5 minutes before the time is up and when the time is up. And if any technical problem occur to the current presenter, she needs to do the troubleshoot in the background and the upcoming presenter must take over. And then if there is any question during the presentation, please type into the chat box in your Zoom control panel. We will bring them up during Q&A session at the end of all presentation. So Jen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Our first speaker is Ananta Singha. Her topic is gender relations, social cultural changes, and reproductive autonomy among tribes of India, a case study of the Bru. So yes, please, first speaker, you can start to share your screen now, and you have 20 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So very good morning to all and greetings from India. There has been a slight technical glitch on my side, but I will try my best to make up for that. So I'll just start by sharing the PowerPoint. So is the PowerPoint, is it, can you see?
Not yet, Miss Anitita.
No, not yet.
Okay.
You can send the file to us if you want.
Yes, actually, madam, I've sent the recorded video too. I mean, I've submitted that too, but okay, I will try to send.
Oke,
Okay,
Bu,
sure.
kami sudah ada videonya.
Hello and greetings. I'm going to present my paper on gender relations, sociocultural change, and reproductive autonomy among tribes of India.
Okay, we're still not seeing your PowerPoint.
I guess,
Mainstream
Jen, I guess
literature
this is
on
the
the
video.
culturally sanctioned position of women, as also women's autonomy, strongly point towards the relatively higher status and autonomy of women in tribal societies vis-a-vis their non-tribal counterparts. Interestingly, however, this does not necessarily translate into higher contraceptive prevalence and lower fertility, pointing towards the need of clarifying the pathways through which autonomy is supposed to influence reproductive behavior. It also calls for contextualizing the content of autonomy among the tribes. In a nutshell, gender relations, that is, its contextualization and its changing nature during the course of development and sociocultural change, need to be carefully investigated. The present study examines the relationship between gender relation, sociocultural change, and reproductive autonomy among tribes using a case study of the Brus, a particularly vulnerable tribal group inhabiting the northeastern region of India. The selection of the particular tribal group is guided by two considerations. The first is that discourses on the role of gender on demographic outcomes of tribes are relatively rare, and thus this research would generate crucial information on elements of gender relations as it affects demographic or reproductive decisions, specifically on the relatively understudied group. And second, ethnographic literature on the Bru indicate that the group is at early stages of sociocultural transition with distinct signs of acculturation but retain distinct tribal cultural characteristics. Thus, the Bru make for a textbook example of studying the relationships between changing gender relations, sociocultural change, and reproductive behavior. Therefore, the study has three broad aims. The first is to understand, or to rather examine, the efficacy of standard DHS variables in measuring women's autonomy in terms in context of non-mainstream cultures as embodied in the Bru. Second is to examine the role of reproductive autonomy in determining contraceptive use, and the third is to understand the role of gender relations in shaping reproductive autonomy among the Bru. Now, the data for this study, the study is basically based on primary data. For the quantitative part of the analysis, the sample size is 400, and for the qualitative analysis using interviews, 30 in-depth interviews were conducted. Logistic regression has been performed to analyze the determinants of contraceptive use and different dimensions of reproductive autonomy. So starting with the main findings. So the first one here, figure 1, it provides information on the percentage distribution of Bru women across the different items of household decision-making autonomy, which are about major household purchases, purchases for daily needs, visits to family and friends, own health care, and spending family's total income. Now, as can be seen, the majority of women in the sample, they reveal moderate to high autonomy. Interestingly, most Bru women respond that they take household decisions jointly with their husbands, which reveals a fair amount of gender egalitarianism prevailing in the Bru society. However, a closer look at the individual indicators of household decision-making tells a slightly different story. And basically, a significant proportion of Bru men alone take the decision where finances are concerned. Going over to freedom of movement. The questions included in analyzing the freedom of movement are basically those which you find in the regular DHS survey. So the woman is usually whether she's allowed to go to the following places alone, with someone, or not at all: to the market, to a health facility, and to places outside the village. It will be seen from this diagram that among the three components of mobility, a significantly large proportion of women, around 35%, they reveal that they can freely go to the market alone without any accompanying person. Now, when I asked about the inconsistency and asked why they are accompanied by husbands to the clinics or to outside the village, they expressed the view that it is not because of any imposition on them by their husbands or relatives, but due to practical considerations. Now, in this specific case, it has uneasiness on the part of the Riang or the Bru women to converse meaningfully in a non-tribal dialect. Moving over to reproductive autonomy, following Upadhyay and others. So this reproductive autonomy scale, it has been constructed using 10 items with pre-coded responses, which are intended to measure autonomy along 3 specific dimensions: reproductive decision-making, communication, and coercion, or freedom from coercion. Now, as can be seen from this figure, nearly 3/4 of Bru women have high reproductive autonomy, which suggests that they have considerable freedom in the reproductive sphere. However, the picture is slightly different again if we look at different indicators or the sub-indices. So specifically, more than half of the Bru women have expressed that they have low reproductive decision-making autonomy and hence have little voice concerning whether to use a contraceptive method and the type of contraception to use. So and there are a significant number of women who have expressed lack of autonomy, particularly on the subject of freedom to choose a contraceptive method and the type of method to use. Regarding the results from the binary logistic regressions, so along with age and education, freedom from coercion, that stands out to be a crucial factor influencing the use of modern methods of contraception. And regarding the determinants of reproductive autonomy and its individual components, it reveals that freedom of movement of the Bru women, along with education, are most consistently associated with greater autonomy in the reproductive sphere. Now, as noted by Martha Nussbaum, in the context of capabilities in general, they are not just abilities residing inside the person, but also the freedoms or opportunities created by a combination of personal attributes and the political, social, and economic environment. So the presence of independent mobility of women is a reflection not just of the individual attributes of the woman, but of the broader social and cultural context of which she is a part of. So in this sense, mobility of Bru women reflect the overall absence of perceptions of subordination and greater awareness and confidence to deny coercion in reproductive matters. Overall, the principal findings are that women's schooling, ownership of land, mobility or freedom of movement, and gender role ideology have significant effects on reproductive autonomy of Brus. With that, I come to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry for that technical problem. Actually, I was supposed to present for a longer time, but I couldn't. So if there are any questions, I them after the presentation.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank you very much. We were able to hear your pre-recorded presentation, so that was good. Our second presenter is Rindan Akawati. The title is Does Frequency of Marriage Influence Fertility in West Java Province, Indonesia? Please, the second speaker. You can now start in 20 minutes, please. Rindan? Yeah, okay.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me
Good
share
morning.
screen
Yeah,
first.
we can hear you.
Yeah. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Very good. You can make it bigger.
Yeah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks God, Alhamdulillah, we are all happy and healthy to start the session today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Rindang Ekawati. I'm a researcher from BKKBN West Java Province, Indonesia. Here I would like to present West Java Province, Indonesia. Here I would like to present my paper. The title is Does Frequency of Marriage Influence Fertility in West Java Province, Indonesia? As we know, West Java Province is one of the 6 provinces among 6 provinces located in Java Island. Its population about quarter of the total population of Indonesia, based on National Census 2020. That is why West Java has a significant contribution to population growth in Indonesia, including the total fertility rate. Based on Indonesia Demographic Health Survey 2017, the National CFR as well as West Java province is 2.5, while the target for West Java is in 2024 is 2.04. The median age at first merit of West Java province is 20.2 years, and the targeted is 21 years in 2024. In addition, West Java is known for its young age as first merit and also high rate of marriage and divorce. There have been many studies on determinant of fertility, including those in Indonesia. Only few focusing on the role of frequency of marriage on fertility. Do women who are widowed and married more than once are considered to have higher fertility. Taking this into account, this study aims to determine whether the age at first marriage, frequency of marriage, the area of residence affect the fertility in West Java province. This study uses a secondary data from 2018 Program Accountability Performance Survey, we call it SCAP. SCAP is an annually national scale survey that collect data on adolescent reproductive health program, family planning, media exposure to population information, adolescent reproductive health, as well as family empowerment and resilience. The study used a cross-sectional approach focusing on data in West Java province. The total population is women of childbearing age, we call it WUS, wanita usia subur, in West Java about 22.7 million people, with a sample of about 12,000.350 women aged 15 to 49 years. The sample analyzed were 9,814 women of childbearing age who have been married. The description of variable, we use fertility, we use children ever born as a measure of fertility, divided into two categories, who has 0 to 2 children, more than 2 children, while the independent variable is age at first marriage, divided into 3 categories, less than 20 years, 20 to 30 years, more than 30 years. Marriage frequency, only once and more than once. Place of residence, rural and urban. While the age at first marriage and marriage frequency is direct variable, then the place of residence is indirect variable. The data analysis, we use 3 stages, namely a univariate, describe the frequency distribution of all variables, both independent and the dependent variable. The second is bivariate, is an analysis the relationship between each independent variable and the dependent variable. A multivariate is determined to determine the most dominant variable that contributes to the number of children ever born, or CEB, by using the logistic regression. In table 1, we can see the distribution of children ever born, age at first marriage, marriage frequency, and place of residence. Most of the respondents, about 70%, have 0 to 2 CEB. While age at first marriage, most of them, about almost 50%, married between 15 to 20 years. Then marriage frequency, most of them married only once, about 90%. While most of them, almost 70%, live in the urban area. Able to see the relationship between age at first marriage, marriage frequency, place of residence, and the children ever born. we can see in the table too, there is a significant relationship between age at first marriage and number of CEB with a p-value 0.00. That means that the younger the age at first marriage, the higher the tendency to have more than 2 CEB. Likewise, the frequency of marriage has a significant relationship with the number of children if born, p0.000. That means that women whose marriage frequency more than once tend to have more than 2 children if born. While the place of residence, which is an indirect factor, didn't have a significant relationship with number of children ever born, the p-value 0.056, but it was included in the multivariate analysis because the p-value less than 0.25. The table 3 shows the modeling analysis of the most influential factor on the number of children ever born. Among the 3 independent variables, we can see that respondents with age at first marriage 15 to 30 years had 10.5 times the opportunity to have children ever born more than 2 compared with those who married above 30 years after being controlled by other variables. Respondents with the frequency of marriage more than once have a 1.7 times chance of having children ever born more than 2 compared with those who marry only once. Respondents who live in rural area, the opportunity has a protective factor 0.7 times to have children ever born more than 2 compared to those in the rural area, in the urban area. Meaning that respondents who live in urban area have a tendency to have children ever born more than 2. The conclusion, the frequency of marriage influenced the number of children ever born in West Java. Women who married more than once are more likely to have more than 2 children ever born. However, the most powerful factor influencing the number of children ever born more than 2 is the age at first marriage. That is why the program for maturing the age at first marriage for women needs to be strengthened so that the marital stability can be maintained and ultimately quality of family can be realized to all of families in Indonesia in general and in West Java in particular. Finally, the target of total fertility rate can be more easily achieved. Thank you about your participation, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Professor Jane, I think you still mute your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for the second speaker. Now we move on to the final speaker, Aishwarya, and
Yes, ma'am.
her presentation is on who are those delaying childbearing and why do they do that. It's a qualitative investigation from advanced age women in Mumbai. Please.
Yes, ma'am. I'm just
Aishwarya.
sharing my screen. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Very good morning, all of you. I'll begin with my presentation now.
Yes, please. You can show your PowerPoint.
Right. Who are those delaying childbearing and why do they do that?
We're not seeing it yet. You need to bring it up.
Uh-huh.
We're seeing your
you are
screen.
Ma'am, I have already shared it.
We are seeing your screen, but it's
Okay, okay.
you haven't opened it yet.
Okay, it will take time. I think the system is a little slow. It's showing that it's shared now.
Hmm.
Is it visible now?
Not yet.
Okay.
Maybe you need to minimize your main screen. We're seeing your file folder on the desktop.
Okay. On my screen, it's showing full screen. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not seeing it. Maybe close it and open it again, please.
Yes, ma'am. Is it on?
We can see you now. Yeah,
Okay.
but not the screen yet.
Okay. Now it will be shared now.
Okay, wonderful. Now you can make it bigger.
Yeah.
Click on that.
Right. I'm doing that.
Perfect. We
Okay.
got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So-
Thank you.
Okay, sorry for the delay, all of you. My subject title is Who are those delaying childbearing and why do they do that? A qualitative insight from advanced aged women in Mumbai. The trend of delayed childbearing is emerging in some parts of urban areas in India. It signifies the onset of second demographic transition with below replacement level. According to the recent National Family Health Survey 4, shows that also informed that fertility has delayed considerably in most states, with only 11 states still above replacement level. Among them, the TFR of most of the states are as low as in the developed countries of the world. Literature abounds about late first childbearing process in Western countries, but studies are very scarce in Indian context so as to know who are those delaying childbearing and why do they do that. The study is an attempt to explore the profile of the respondents and the reasons of delayed childbearing. Data and methodology. The study was conducted in 4 hospitals of Mumbai. The study period was October 2014 and April 2015. It was based on in-depth interviews, qualitative interviews. Semi-structured questionnaire was used during the interview, and the sample were 25 women who had delivered their first child at the age of 35 years and above. The inclusion criteria for women were women aged 35 years and above, currently married women, only first-time mothers, have recently delivered first biological child within a month of the interview. The findings of my study are the profile of the respondents. 13 out of 25 women were above the age of 35 years, of which 2 were above age of 40 years, and the rest were of age 35 years. All women interviewed were married and educated except 1 who was not educated. 9 were graduates, 3 had engineering degrees, 3 were MBAs, 1 was educated till 9th class and 3 had studied till 10th grade, while 2 had studied till 12th. The professions of the women ranged from clerk, manager, analyst, television producer, finance consultant, and housewives. 12 out of 25 were involved in managerial level jobs, while 2 were clerks and 7 were homemakers. While going through the interview, it was very organic when I asked about their profile to go deeper into the work life of the women. How do they cope up with the childbearing and work-life balance? So many of the women reciprocated that they had to leave job when it became troublesome to conceive and plan pregnancy with work and continue to work during pregnancy. A 35-year-old manager said, I worked in a stockbroking firm and mine is a very stressful work. I don't have time for family. It becomes very difficult to manage home and work both. Both me and my husband have a hectic work schedule. We hardly get time for each other. I had to leave job for childbearing. Many women had therefore had to leave job since there was no provision of maternity leave in their offices too. Many had to take leave for all months of pregnancy without pay. As per one 36-year-old telephone operator, my company is a small one. There is no provision of maternity leave there. I will have to take all the leaves without pay. I have already taken 1 month of leave due to illness. There are many organizations where there is no provision of paternity leave at all. Some had it, but the period of leave ranged between 3 to 5 days in private firms and 15 days in government sectors. Women felt that this leave is not sufficient, especially in cases where mothers go through C-section delivery and those who are living in nuclear family with no support other than that of husband. According to a 35-year-old manager, I had a C-section and my husband gets paternity leave only for 3 days. There is no one to take care of me at home. Either I will have to call some family members or I will have to hire someone. It will be very difficult for me to take care of myself and child on my own. There should be paternity leave for around a month. So this is the profile of the respondents. Going through the work profile, the attitude of employees were also an area which needs to be focused. So many of the respondents under the study voluntarily expressed their discriminatory behavior of their organizations during their pregnancy. According to a chartered accountant, my employees were very insensitive and were indifferent towards my pregnancy, though at the end of my pregnancy, I worked from home, but the expectations were more while working from home. I had to complete all my work strictly by stipulated deadline. My efficiency was questioned when I asked them to decrease the workload as I was pregnant. Similarly, a television producer said there should be provision of flexible working hours in every office during the pregnancy after childbearing. Work from home should be the other options. There should be creche facility in every office and provisions to attend meeting on Skype should be available all the time. Coming to the reasons of the delayed childbearing in my study, medical issues came out to be one of the significant factors. The study found that 20 out of 25 women had problems to conceive child, and only 5 did not have any problem at conceptions. According to a 36-year-old woman, and I and my husband were psychologically not ready for child without any particular reason. We wanted to enjoy life without any responsibility and become financially more stable, which led to delay in childbearing. And by the time we were ready, I was not able to conceive, and finally we had to resort to IVF. Most of the women in the study faced difficulty in conceptions because of the medical problems. According to a manager, we delayed it and so had to go through a lot of medical help, doctor visit, heavy doses of drugs, injections, expensive procedures. It was a terrible time, but we tried to support and console each other in this long journey of having a child. People should not delay unnecessarily until there is some serious reason. We regret we delayed it a lot and had to go through stressful life of the past few years. The second most important reason in my study came out to be finding a partner. Most of the late marriages in the study were late. Most of the delayed childbearing was on account of late marriages, and most of the late marriages under the study were on account of not finding a suitable match. These changing behavior factors together led to delayed childbearing and hence delay in childbearing. Delay in marriage and hence delay in childbearing. One of the respondents expressed that marriage search took 4 to 5 years. I did not like most of the guys I met for marriage. One guy at office liked me, but he went abroad. After 2 years when he returned, he proposed, and And I agreed, and we got married. After my marriage was my brother's wedding, and there was some other personal commitments. I also wanted to settle down and know each other well before starting a family. Education and career. 8 out of the 11 women who had late marriage were employed at managerial level, were highly qualified, having postgraduate and professional degree. This indicates that with higher educational and occupational level, most of the women delay their marriage and childbearing. As per our manager, I wanted to get married only after I complete my education, so I delayed marriage and childbearing. And another finance professional said, I liked a boy of my class, but we wanted to complete education and get settled in our career before getting married and starting a family. The third most important reason which came out of this analysis was changes in the value system. As we see, and the traditional norms are changing in every society. So even in Indian context, the traditional thinking of getting married, having a child is no more very popular, especially in urban sectors. So in my study, 3 out of 25 responded delayed childbearing because they wanted to enjoy togetherness before having child. They wanted to travel to some preferred destinations. If you wanted to remain together without the responsibility of child for a few years. And as many of the respondents said, I wanted to roam across the world before I plan a child. Child is a big responsibility. We wanted to enjoy togetherness for a few more years before we planned a child. According to a 35-year-old analyst, I wanted to party, enjoy life, remain without responsibility for some years before planning a child. So the 3 main themes that emerges from my analysis is most of the women who were interviewed were high profile, highly educated women, barring a few who were who had attended schools, not college. Moreover, when we come to the reasons of delay, the most important reason of delay came out to be medical condition of the women, and most of the medical conditions were not able to conceive, problems in fallopian tubes, problems with eggs, and many such problems were there. Even for spouses, the sperm count and all these were most important problems, which did not help them to conceive when they wanted. Secondly, unlike the past, late marriage delayed the childbearing as women were no longer confined to homes, as they had enrolled in higher education, actively participating in workforce. In this study, though late marriage is considered to be one of the biggest factors for delaying childbearing, but in most of the cases, late marriage was a result of long academic and career pursuits for women and their spouses. Thirdly, changes in the value system led to delay in childbearing. Many women in the study had different plans to fulfill before they start a family, like stable financial status, career growth, traveling, and enjoying singlehood. The study finds that as women are being educated, they have various aspirations and personal goals to fulfill before they begin a family and embrace childbearing responsibilities. Though it is a personal choice to reproduce and decide the timing of reproduction, however, it cannot be ignored that medical complications do grow with the age, as is evident from the study findings. The recommendations of my study is there is a need for better awareness regarding the use of new advanced technologies of reproduction along with its side effects, because many of the respondents did not know in detail the side effect of the ART, and most of them resorted on these technologies completely. There should be some curriculum with special focus on reproductive health in school syllabus so as to know the effect of age and fertility and changes in physiology with time so that they do not suffer in lack of knowledge and take informed decisions. Thirdly, the work environment should be friendly enough with 6 to 9 months of mandatory maternity leaves in all organizations, and preferably 1 month of paternity leave with flexible working hours and provision of work from home for both women and men. Also, insurance companies should cover for pregnancy cost and other medicinal and ART cost as it is in developed countries. Limitations of my study were the study is based on cross-sectional data, so it may not allow the cause-effect relationship between future fertility intentions and determinants. The interviews were taken within few days of delivery, so some of the answers may be altered after some point of time with the recovery of mothers. Also, mothers' response may vary as they were interviewed in hospital setting. The findings cannot be generalized for a population as a sample is not representative and the study is exploratory in nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. So now
Thank you,
with
ma'am.
all three presentation has finished, I would turn the floor to our second moderator. Sari, please.
Thank you, Professor Jane. It looks like we have several questions in here. So for the first one, I will read for the first speaker from Anastasia. Dear Anindita, I interested to your study about women's reproductive autonomy in India. Could you elaborate more about the gender role ideology that was used in this study? Also, is there any case variable in your study? Thank you. This is for the first speaker.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. Yes, gender role ideology actually in the questionnaire, it has, I mean, I've tried to measure it using respondents' idea on sharing domestic chores and on their attitude towards non-household work. So these were the questions. I think Anastasia ma'am has also asked another question in the thread. I can see that what were the socio-cultural factors, if any, that were included, and about women's double burden in sense of productive and reproductive roles. So essentially, I should have given a better idea of the women that I'm talking about. Now, these are women who belong to a particularly vulnerable tribal group. So they are almost completely rural, poor women, and for them, working outside home is a necessity. In fact, I found that among them, those of them who are more educated or their husbands are more educated and they have a higher standard of living, now they are opting not to work because the kind of work that they find is not the service sector or any kind of prestigious job. They generally work on the family farm or the work as agricultural laborers. So in that sense, I don't think in this study, including that variable would apply too well. But for sociocultural norms, I've included variables like the age at marriage, which was historically speaking higher for tribes. And we can see a decline in that now. And what is the impact of that on women's autonomy after marriage? And the other variable is dowry payments. That is the sociocultural variable I've actually included in this study. And but I did not find any significant association because still now, dowry is not, a must. I mean, from the side of the bride to the groom, any kind of payments during marriage that are being made are not out of any severe compulsion, but the parents who are well off or better, economically, they prefer to give their daughters some kind of cash or furniture for the house and all. So I did try to understand what kind of sociocultural the changes that we of course these changes are happening, but in this particular study I did not find any strong effect of these variables, mostly because these are not very widespread till now. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Anindita. I hope the answer is clear enough for Anastasia. So the question for second speaker, there are two questions to you, Bu Rindang. So I will read one by one. So the first question is, why other controls like SLI, education, etc. were not taken in the data analysis? Is it because lack of data? As we all know that from your presentation, the independent variables, only 3 variables, right? The age of marriage, marriage frequency, and place of residence. So in here, Saswata asks why other control variables are not included.
Thank you, moderator Ibu Sari. Yeah, from Mr. Saswata, we have a lot of variables, but those variables are already analyzed by other researchers. So we our team focus on the frequency of marriage because this variable is very few study on focusing on this variable. So that like variable wealth index, age, education, and use of contraception has been analyzed by other research. Lot of research are analyzed about that. Actually, our data have those variable already, and has been already analyzed by other researchers. So we focus on the frequency of marriage because only few of the researchers focus on this variable. And in West Java, this is a common view that married at young age and then divorced and remarried and that kind of, especially in the West Java province. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Bu Rinda. Could you please answer another question from the Pratiwi? It said that, can you explain more about how to conduct the program of measuring the age of first marriage for women in West Java during pandemic era, considering the high rate of COVID-19 now in that area? I guess the West Java is red area for COVID-19, right? So Pratiwi here asks about how you explain more about to conduct a program of measuring the age of the first marriage.
Yeah, especially in the pandemic era, we have a certain serious challenge because it is considered during the pandemic area, there is a lot of child marriage in West Java. That is why we have to have strengthen our approach to religious leader, to local leader, and to the KUA. You mean the Office of Religion Affairs, like KUA. Then we have to inform the dangerous or the cost of marriage and child marriage, like the cost in physical health, like health, reproduction health, and psychological cost, and then economic cost, etc. So that we have to do a lot of work comparing to before the pandemic, because the pandemic is very has a lot effect on much sector of life. That's why we have strengthened our information, our campaign to approach the religious leader, to the local leader, to the religion affairs office like KUA, and then we have to strengthen the age at first marriage. And for those who already married in the era pandemic, we have to ask them to delay first children, like that.
Okay, thank you, Bu Rindang. So the main point are collaboration with other sector. So for the third speaker, Aishwarya, so it's quite a lot, not really then.
I can see, ma'am. I can read the questions and answer it.
Do you want to answer?
Yeah,
or should I read first?
As you wish, ma'am.
Okay, so for the for Aishwarya, this is from Saswata. do you agree that some signs of second demographic transition is in progress in urban India, although in different form? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I very much agree that there are many signs of second demographic transition in progress in urban India. It is most of the states in India have gone below replacement level fertility. Another thing, as I explained, changes in the value system. The many traditional norms are changing. People are more oriented to, their basic needs are fulfilled and they want to explore themselves in terms of personal and professional relationships. And they don't want to stick to the traditional norms of getting married and having child at particular age. So there are many things which shows that urban India is incomplete. There are many signs that we are in second demographic transition. Secondly, yes, ma'am. But I did not understand what different forms that is asking.
Sorry?
I did not understand the question that it is in different form. This is the two things what I can relate to my study. But do you agree that some signs of second demographic transition is in progress in urban India, although in different forms? So what different form is trying to figure out?
Yeah. I'm not also quite understand what different form means, but
yeah.
Maybe
you think that
you know,
there is a demographic transition and in urban India nowadays because women in there having their different mindset nowadays.
Right.
but you don't see a cohabitation.
Yeah, you just
yeah, it is there, but the proportion is very low. And only in Mumbai and Delhi kind of cities that you can see such trends.
Right, and you don't see birth outside of the wedlock. So those are some of the different.
There
forms.
was one sample. I interviewed many women. There was one sample only, which you are stating, but she was not. She did not want to be interviewed.
Yeah. So in general, in the European
in general,
area,
it is very low. The proportion is very low. Yeah. And the second question on the same question was it is only for own aspiration or aspiration for the children. So under my study, what I observed that it was mainly for childbearing, since they were pregnant, so they did not tell about the aspiration for the children. But the aspirations of their personal and professional. It's not just the professional growth and these things led to delay in childbearing, but even on the personal front, they took a lot of time to understand each other and have good family relation before they embark on the journey of parenthood. So obviously aspirations in both ways, professional and personal, led to delay in childbearing in most of the cases.
Okay, sorry, yeah. So the next question is for Sulachana.
One more question is there, ma'am, for me.
Sorry?
One more question is for me.
Yes, for you. Were there any educational differences between the partners? I don't know, you have the partners educational level or not in your study. And then like women were more qualified than men and were in managerial position. And also, did you look at work responsibilities and due to which there was a delay in planning the pregnancy?
Yeah, I saw educational differences, but only in lower segment of population, those who were living in slums or those who are living in, low middle class families. So there were a difference in educational differences between the partners. But when going to the high income group, there were no difference. Most of the couples were MBAs or engineers or doctors. So there was no difference in above strata of the society. Like women were more qualified. No, I think in most of my study, both men and women were almost equally qualified. I did not find any women who were more qualified than men. And most of them were in managerial positions. I looked into the work responsibilities, and it definitely stated that work responsibilities was a big reason for delay in childbearing. But not just work responsibility, even the aspirations of the people to rise, move up the ladder of the corporate sector, and having a stable financial growth, that this much of many of the respondents stated that we want this much of salary per month before we think of planning a child. So obviously work responsibilities at office contributed to the delay of childbearing and planning pregnancy. Thank you.
Okay, so one comment for your study, I think different from Saswata, different from here is still value of children and family formation is important part of life. So I think in Saswata countries or area, they still value children and family formation. And then thank you, Aishwarya. And then
Thank you very much.
yeah. And then for second speaker again, Bu Rindang. This is another question from Mutiatun. Ibu Rindang, if I'm not mistaken, based on your finding, the fertility in urban is higher compared to rural one. Could you please explain the rationale reason why?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for Mr. Mutiatun. Miss Mutiatun.
Yes.
Yeah. The urban population, urban fertility is higher compared to the rural. This is the transition of behavior and fertility, yeah, because we found in the demographic health survey in 2017, there is in urban area with high socioeconomic status, high education, and high wealth index have a higher fertility than the urban area. Our program or BKKBN program, a lot of program are focusing on the rural area, but maybe on the people in the urban area have their own transition of fertility behavior. There is occur to those who higher education, higher level of wealth index, and higher economic status. Also, they have this higher fertility compared to those in the rural. That is why, because transition of behavior. Maybe our program also have to focus on people in the urban also, because our program, most of our program are in the rural, so we have to back to the people in the urban also, because it happened to the high economic status, high education, like that. We have to strengthen our program also in the urban, and also we have to do another study, maybe qualitative research, or what about how do they change their behavior of fertility, even they have already the economic better economic status than those in the rural area.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Rindang. It's so surprisingly, in urban West Java, the fertility is higher than rural one. So the question again are for the three of you, the speakers. So this is from Professor Jane, I think. Can you give us some ideas of family policies in the area of you are examining? How accessible are daycare? Are there daycare subsidized, cash incentives, maternity or paternity leaves in those areas? This question is for three speakers, so please, Anindita, you can answer first.
Okay, ma'am, I'm just trying to understand the question exactly. What is the, I mean, okay, is it from Sulochana, the question? from
Are
Sumatra,
there-
I can see.
Trying to get some background of the family policies in the place that you're studying. A daycare
Okay.
available, accessible? You talked about the
Okay,
work-life
yes,
benefit, work-life conflict, and other
Yes.
things. Are there different kind of incentives for a woman to have babies? You know, what kind of leaves, parental leaves are there in the area? Are there anything?
Yes, I mean, as I said, these when I say rural, and I have done this survey in a very small northeastern state called Tripura, and the rural that I'm talking about is, you know, in the, I mean, what can I say, in the least economically developed sense we can think of. So there doesn't arise any issue of, you know, incentives for or against, you know, childbearing. The only thing that is common here is what we have, these health workers who are given the job of providing knowledge. They come from the side of the state, the government, to inform women about contraceptive methods, family planning methods, and about the pros and cons. And this is done on a door-to-door basis. And as far as I can understand, now I have not investigated very directly, but as far as I can understand,
Okay. So other than
the
family
desired
planning,
fertility,
there's
yes,
nothing.
ma'am.
So other than family planning, there's
Uh,
nothing, no other services.
No, other than family planning, we also have this maternal healthcare facilities that are provided uh, at the village level. Yes, so these are there, and in fact, done. I've also covered natal and postnatal care facilities. So yes, these are also provided. And yes, I think around 40% of the women in the sample said that they did access and take help of maternal health facilities. But I think that is as far as it goes, and it is mostly, I think, it's demand driven. I mean, in the surveyed villages, it was demand driven. We have this conception that we have to, you know, propagate or the policies a lot, but I found it's not like that. The young women and their families are very keen, in fact, on improving their health and their reproductive needs, and what they need is more support from the side of the state. They understand the value of not having too big a family. They understand the value of, you know, maternal health care, but there are certain infrastructural constraints, and for them mostly it is you know, financial constraints that puts them in a situation where they may not be able to fulfill their requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the second speaker, what are your answer to this? Can you give your comments?
You should unmute yourself, please.
Daycare, especially in West Java, we know as a luxury thing, yeah. Very few daycare in the West Java, especially for working mothers. Even in mothers who work in a government office or a public, in the factory, there are only a few, something like the daycare, a very luxury thing. We have very lack of daycare in, especially in West Java. Yeah, very. If there is, it is very expensive. Only certain moms can afford it, like that. Actually, children whose mother working at the factory, like they are, the children is taken care by the grandma or by other family members. That's why the quality of children, apa namanya, parenting is very not very good in here. like that.
Thank you.
Very few, very lack of the daycare. It's very luxury thing. That's my answer.
Yes, thank you. Oh,
Okay, Sari, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Right. Are
May I
there?
go ahead now?
Yeah, go ahead. I haven't heard.
Yeah.
Do you want? Yeah, go ahead.
As far as family policies are concerned, there are various policies, especially in the rural sector. We have many health workers, as Anita said, that ASHA workers are there who take care of maternal health, who take care of safe delivery, family planning, and vaccination also. So they are met, but there may be infrastructure problems. So the realizations of goal is still to be, it should be increased. But there are policies there which can help better maternal and safe delivery policies are there. Other thing is accessibility of daycare. When we check out the government organizations and the higher corporates, they have good daycare facilities available to them. In corporate sector, the expense would be a little higher for daycare. But since those who are in managerial positions, they can easily afford. But there is a problem when it comes to lower managerial people, and those who, most of the offices which are not big offices, do not have a good daycare system at their place. There is policy that if you have more than 15 number of staffs, you should have a daycare, but it is still to be implemented. Unfortunately, after my study, there has been change in the policy, and there is better maternity and paternity leave. Now we have 6 months of maternity leave for the women, and 15 days to 3 months of paternity leave for the men in most of the sectors. So this is one of the good thing. And daycare subsidies and cash incentives, subsidies I'm not aware of, but daycare is still not there in most of the organizations, barring few big organizations and some government sectors. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Sherry, sorry. Are there other questions on the floor, from the floor? Anyone have any questions for either of the speaker? I think, I'm not sure where Sari is. Okay, Sari?
sorry, Professor Jen, I have trouble with my connection here.
Oh, okay, you're back.
And so I can't see the chat because it's empty now in my screen.
I can see your name, not your face.
Yes.
Your video. Okay, we see you
thank
now. You're back.
Yeah, yes. But Professor Jen, I see the chat box in my screen are empty, so I cannot read the questions. I guess
Okay, yes,
the last one is from Mutiatun to who? To Anindita, I guess.
Okay. I can see one question.
Yeah.
The remaining I've answered. I can see that from Sulochana that she's asking that did you look at contraceptive choice decisions, and do you believe that male partners accompanying health facilities improve the health status? Yes, in fact, regarding the first question, the reproductive autonomy index, that has 3 separate dimensions, as I said. One is regarding reproductive decision making, that is who decides whether to use a contraceptive method or not, and what kind of a method to use. So I did look at that. And regarding reproductive decision making, I found that yes, in this particular case, education of women, with the higher education and women who are older, and also those of them who have got a greater freedom of movement, and they have got higher agency in this sphere. And I think these are along the expected dimensions. Regarding the partners accompanying them, yes. So when I was investigating regarding the issue of maternal health care, so we have these questions on who accompanied you for your last pregnancy, and whether it was Asha worker, whether it was your husband. So yes, in many cases, I'm sorry, I cannot say the exact percentage now, but I did not find it very common for the husband to be accompanying. It was rather a female member of the family. And since the time the Asha, the health workers, they have been given this job, so they take it upon themselves. Okay, they accompany these women, and the households rely on the Asha health workers who are women to help their wives or daughters during the pregnancy. So husbands accompanying is not very common, at least in the among the population or the community that I studied. Although I cannot make that a generalization for other tribal groups or even for other communities, but the Asha workers, I find they because they have got more knowledge, and so the people also think, the Riyangs also think, so they will, and the husbands do arrange the transport and all, but generally it is a female member of the family or the Asha worker. I didn't find it very common for the husbands to be accompanying that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anindita. So the next questions here is for Aishwarya from Pratiwi. What is your suggestion for working family to balance work-life condition in Mumbai, as the social burden to have children for working mom is higher than men?
Yeah.
Please answer.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I saw in my study, I mean, most of the women as well as men were working, and it was a good bond between them, as they were having a shared responsibility of family also. It's not about, since men are working and women is also working since, so they have, most of the couples I met in the hospitals, they shared a good bond where they shared most of the responsibilities of household chores, so that the woman is not affected in the way that she has to have a double burden. But obviously it is limited to a very small segment of our society. It is the most urban managerial class people who had this kind of situations. It is still to come to percolate down to the all sections of the society. So I mean, it was a good balance, and but since their aspirations were high and they have to explore many things, so there were some burden of obviously social burden as well as burden of work, which led to such trend. Thank you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. So another question, further question actually from Sulochana
Yes.
to Anindita,
Yes,
who was
yes, thank you.
using.
Yes. Regarding the whether it is a female or male method of contraception, male methods of contraception are very rare. It is so rare that I found not more than 2% of the couples use male methods. It's basically the pills, and in 20% of the cases they have gone for the IUD, intrauterine device, and sterilization. Those above 35, they have also opted for sterilization, but female sterilization. So yes, the males don't. I guess the burden of using contraception is on the females.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Anindita. Any more questions? From the chat box, I seen that every questions have been answered, Prof. Jen. So So the floor is yours again.
Thank you very much, Sari, and for all our three speakers, Anindita, Rindan, and Aishwara, for your presentation. And we learned a lot about fertility, determinants of fertility in your area. Thank you for the participant for the questions you have raised for our speakers and for
Prof.
attending
Jen,
the
excuse me.
conference. Yes.
Yes, I think we have the last question, if you
Okay.
can permit us. Okay. This is for all the speakers. What do you all feel about women aspirations and decision to reproduce should be with females?
This is for all three speakers. Shall
Yeah,
we
this is
start from
for-
the third speaker first?
Yes,
And then
Okay,
second speaker and first speaker this
Yes,
time.
ma'am. I believe that women aspirations and decisions to reproduce, I mean, obviously it should be with women, even if they have aspirations to go ahead with their career, or even they have aspirations of having decisions to reproduce child. It should be with the females as well as male. I mean, both the spouses should take a decision of having a child, but women should have the equal right of going ahead with their aspirations, as well as the timing of reproduction should be with them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aishwarya. And for Bu Rindang, the second speaker. Bu Rindang, can you hear?
Can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay. Thank you, Bu Sari. Yeah, I think that decision to reproductive should be made both with female and male and husband and wife, because in certain area like the wife will be more, the husband will love more if the wife have more children, like that. It's still in the a certain culture, so that we have to accommodate also the female decision to have their reproductive life. I think that, yeah, not only because of the male only want more children and the wife has to follow to the instruction of the husband, something like that. We have this is to be have the collaboration between husband and wife to the reproductive health of the male.
Okay, thank you, Bu Rindang. And the last one from Anindita, can you respond to the questions?
Okay, so as I understand, the question is on whom or whose decision is it, whether and how many offsprings to have. I think that is an also, I mean, the question is deceptively simple, because there's so many issues involved here. It is the well-being of both the husband and the wife, because there's a matter of emotions, emotional well-being of both partners. But I believe that there should be no coercion. I can say there shouldn't be any coercion in the process. And obviously, if the wife has, a significant agency or autonomy in different spheres of her life, she can negotiate and bargain to hold her position. Well, it boils down to the fact that one is, theoretically or ethically speaking, no one should force the other partner. But in practical situations, I think the only practical solution is to have women acquire enough agency so that she's respected and has a higher status in her household, and she's not forced. At the end of the day, it should be the joint decision of both partners. And the only thing being that when we say joint decision, it is joint in the true sense. It is not the wife conceding to the decision already made by the husband. And for that, it is essential to focus on the capabilities that she needs to develop in the reproductive sphere.
Thank you, Anindita. Since there is no any other questions, so Jen.
Okay, great. Thank you. So again, thank you for all the speakers and the participants. You are very engaging. Thank you for your questions. Since there's no other questions, we will end this session a little bit earlier. And I hope you enjoy other sessions in this conference. Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Take a picture.
Stay
Thank
healthy.
you so much, ma'am.
We want to take a
Thank you.
picture. I see. So I guess if you can, please turn on your video. And the IT staff is going to help us take a picture. So tell us when you're ready, please. Okay, smile. Smile.
Okay then.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care of yourself. It was nice seeing all of you.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Bye.
the
See
rest
you.
of the
Bye.
conference.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Professor.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention? The program will begin shortly.
Hello, Arun. How are you?
All good. Hi, Diane.
Thank you. I will be your co-moderator for this session.
Great. Nice to
And
have you.
there is speaker one, Miss Nohan. Okay, you want to start it now?
We'll start in 5 minutes. That's the time, right?
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Have the other speakers joined or?
I will check it.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention? The program will begin shortly.
And let's start.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention? The program will begin shortly.
Hello everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the noon session of the final day of the Asian Population Association Conference of 2021. I hope all of you are enjoying the conference. Today we have an interesting session on adverse health behaviors and resilience. My name is Arun Balachandran, and I will be the moderator one for this session. I am a postdoctoral fellow at University of Maryland, United States of America. And joining with me will be moderator two, Diane K. Airavati from Indonesia. Without much waste of time, let's all get started with this session. But today we have an interesting session which is really diverse and accommodating several aspects of Asia, not just in terms of places, but also in terms of concepts, because we have 4 presentations which will be covering places in Asia such as Indonesia, Thailand, and all the SAARC countries. And at the same time, we will have also we'll be dealing with this interesting and important topic of adverse health behavior and resilience. And even conceptually, we will be dealing with several diverse adverse health behaviors such as alcohol, drug abuse, tobacco, etc. And the resilience concepts are also really diverse in terms of the family environment related resilience, cohort level resilience, community support, and psychosocial supports. So without much wastage of time, let's start with the session. Some housekeeping rules. Every presenter will be having around 15 minutes for presentation. And all of you, in case you have a urgent question, or even whenever you have a question, you can put that in the chat box, and our moderator too, Diane, will be reading those questions to the speakers at the end of the session. So 15 minutes per presenter. Without much ado, let's start with the presenter one. The presentation is titled Family Environment Factors, Alcohol and Drug Misuse Among Indonesian Students. Our Indonesian National Narcotics Survey based on the Indonesian Narcotics Survey of Students. So over to you, Nohan.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay, please let me know if my voice unclear. Let me start to share my screen first. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nohan Arum Romadona from Knowledge Hub for Reproductive Health, Universitas Indonesia. Today, I will present one of our study. The title is Family Environment Factors, Alcohol and Drug Misuse Among Indonesian Students. The 2010 population census results show that 26.6% of population are adolescent, age 15 to 24, and being a student and adolescent is very vulnerable period, as this is a period of self-seeking and personality. Health problems that occur in adolescent are associated with risky behavior such as smoking, drinking alcohol, drug use, and having premarital sex. Alcohol consumption leads to health problems that affect productivity. Moreover, in Indonesia, an incline percentage of drug users among adolescents accounted for 24 to 28%. The family environment has an important role in determining the personality and behavior of a child. And this study examined more deeply the association of family environment factors and student behavior and alcohol drinking and drug abuse in Indonesia, as well as addressing potential aspects for future prevention. This study utilized a secondary data from the National Database of Illicit Drug Use Survey of Students in 2016 in Indonesia, conducted by the Indonesian National Narcotic Board, or BNN, collaborated with the Center for Health Research Universitas Indonesia. The survey covered 18 provinces, including 11 priority provinces, based on the prevalence of drug abuse in the last 1 year. The sample distribution covered 1,284 schools and 35,340 students of junior, senior high school, and university students. The survey used the self-administrated modified UNODC structure illicit drug use questionnaire, and 2 outcomes used in this analysis are alcohol drinking and drug use. Alcohol drinking and drug use are defined by the current prevalence within past year use and exclude students who responded do not know or do not remember. Family environmental factors are explained in a modified conceptual model on adaptation and coping abilities on young adult alcohol use and the family environment by Karen M. Jennison 2016. In this study, family environment factors, including factors of experience, the physical or verbal violence from the parents, low-level parental monitoring and interaction, opportunity to discuss serious problem with the parents, and family behaviors. Additional questions are including parents, restriction, level of social bonding, and monitoring from parents also include in this analysis. This table presents characteristic of socio-demographic from both alcohol and drug users. Among this analyzed population, there was a total 13.7% of students identified as alcohol drinkers, while 2.1% drug users in the past year. From the table, we can see that the majority were male. Among alcohol drinkers, they were more likely academic or university student and living outside Java, Bali, while drug use more likely senior high school students. This figure shows family environment factors on alcohol drinking and drug use. In general, there is just slightly different between alcohol and drug use. For example, in this graph, we can see that 41% of students who consume alcohol ever experience verbal violence, and 46.4% of students who use drug ever experience verbal violence, and so on. The odds ratio of alcohol and drug use were calculated using multiple logistic regression and adjusting for the effect of the potential confounding, which is a socio-demographic covariate, including age, gender, education, and also control the student who have friends who had risky behavior. So final model are present below. There was strong evidence that some family environment factor increase the tendency of alcohol drinking and drug use among students in Indonesia. The first gap, we can see that there were 6 family environment factors that were highly associated with alcohol drinking among students. Students who have experienced verbal and physical violence from their parents, exposed with low bonding, low monitoring, and never discuss serious problem with their parents, and also having a family member who engage in alcohol drinking and or drug use have a major influence on student drinking behavior. The strongest risk factor is family member who engage the risky behavior with adjusted OR 4.78, followed by student who never had discussion with parents and have experienced physical violence. In general, the pattern from the second graph are almost the same with the first one. The influence of having family who had risky behavior has strong tendency to drug use in students, followed by never discuss problem and experience physical and verbal violence, while in this case, low bonding, low monitoring, and restriction from parents didn't seen as a strong factors. The study findings are consistent with the prior literature demonstrating a significant risk effect of the family environmental factor with student risky behaviors. Students who have experienced verbal and physical violence from their parents have a higher tendency to consume alcohol and drug use. They will likely suffer from the stress and consume alcohol as self-medication. There is a prior belief that consume drug or substance is beneficial as a maladaptive strategy to help regulate emotional states and cope with stress or disruptive interpersonal violence emotion. In parenting, the family environment has a major influence on a child development. Therefore, a deep understanding of how violence occurs in family and its subsequent impact on the child should be emphasized. Children who didn't have the closeness with their parents tend to rely on their friends as a source information, which sometimes provide unreliable information. However, conflict in a family that leads to poor communication creates less effective monitoring effort of adolescent risky behavior. It is clear that having a family member, either father, mother, siblings, who overconsume alcohol or drug has a strong impact on children's behavior. There is evidence that from the biopsychosocial research that various influence of the family environment, including having a parent who drinks alcohol and earlier exposure to familial alcohol drinking, put the children greater risk for drug use and other related problems than children who were not exposed. Children will always cope with the behavior of the closeness to them and make them as a role model. Okay, the conclusion for the studies are experience of verbal and physical violence, never discuss serious problems, and living with family that adopt that behavior are associated with alcohol and drinking among students. This finding have implication for preventive intervention to strengthen parental support control and also parenting style with less conflict. Adjustment through parental support control and parenting style, particularly in initiating parent-child communication, may demonstrate positive roles in preventing alcohol drinking and drug use strategy in this target population, including parents, family practitioners, educators, and social policy planners. Future research might need to investigate the relations between the family characteristic and alcohol and also drug use by using a longitudinal study to assess a broader range information. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much. Back to moderator.
Thank you, Nohan. Thanks also for being well within the time. Very interesting presentation. Let me reiterate to the floor that any questions to Nohan or any of our presenters, you can type on the chat. Without much ado, let's move on to our next presenter for today. This presentation is titled Onset Trajectories of Tobacco Use in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, a synthetic cohort analysis from the GATES survey, which is the Global Adults Tobacco Survey. Pankuri Jain will be presenting that. Over to you, Pankuri.
Hi, can anyone hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Greetings all. My name is Pankuri Jain, and I am currently working at the Indian Council of Medical Research in the division of preventive oncology and population health, wherein one of my roles and responsibilities is to generate evidence on tobacco use and other lifestyle disorders, which is why I present to you on the onset trajectories of tobacco use in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, wherein this has been done through a birth cohort analysis from the Global Adult Tobacco Survey. Now, it is very important to identify those populations who are vulnerable or at the brink of tobacco use, especially because resources are often limited, and policy guidance has to identify those populations who are especially vulnerable. Further, those individuals who initiate tobacco use early, they develop stronger addictions, and adverse health effects are seen in a more pronounced manner in this population. In this regard, the extant literature on the age of initiation shows that there is a downward trend, that is, more individuals are initiating tobacco use at earlier ages. However, this data is not nationally representative or does not provide a complete picture of the outcome. The research is further primarily focused on tobacco smoking, wherein other forms of tobacco use into which the tobacco industry is diversifying is not being understood very well, wherein smokeless tobacco has kind of taken a backseat. Further, in my analysis, I have taken nations of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh because they already have low ages of initiation, which we can see is 17.8 years in India, 18.7 in Pakistan, and 18.8 years in Bangladesh. Now, the present study aimed to examine patterns of tobacco use initiation, including smoking and smokeless tobacco use, across 5 decades from early adolescence to late adulthood in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, using the cohort analysis. The data that was utilized was the latest round of the Global Adult Tobacco Survey. Now, the Global Adult Tobacco Survey is considered as the foremost authority on information on tobacco use because it uses multi-state geographically clustered design, which gives you a nationally representative data set, and it collects information on various tobacco use patterns in a very detailed manner, including patterns of initiation. Now, the measures that were taken for this study was the age at daily initiation of tobacco smoking or smokeless tobacco among ever users. Now, this includes users which are currently still using and those who have previously quit. This measure was calculated using the question, how many years ago did you first started using smoking daily? Or how many years ago did you first started using smokeless tobacco daily? Now, in those individuals who did not recall the actual age, how many years ago they started, the actual age was asked. For example, how old were you when you first started smoking tobacco daily? The current age was recorded, which was divided into cohorts of 10 years. And demographic characteristics of sex and place of residence was also calculated. Now, this is the complete sample that was taken, wherein we can see the overall response rate was quite high for India, 92.9%. And in Pakistan, it was 81.0%. The person response rate was also quite high in all three countries. Within this sample, the daily tobacco users in tobacco smoking and smokeless tobacco was separately identified. Birth cohorts were calculated with survey year as the base year. For example, for those individuals who were surveyed in the year 2016 and were currently presenting their age as 15 years, the cohort was calculated as 2016 minus 15. So 2001 was the age at birth. Now for this, the assumption was that the birth cohorts were not adjusted for mortality because that information is not captured in the GATS, and the population was assumed to be closed. The distribution of age at initiation of tobacco use was calculated with weighted proportions and 95% confidence interval rates. And these were further adjusted for non-response and missing data. The trend was analyzed by sex, male, female, and place of residence. Further, to sort of contextualize this and to identify wherein are we missing out, the tobacco control policies were also reviewed. Since I could find data in the sense of since independence of in these three nations and with new and the most recent form of the constitution. Now this graph displays the age for those individuals who started tobacco use before the age of 15. This is for smoking and smokeless tobacco, both at the same time. Now we can see that there is a very drastic upward increase in the recent years as more populations are initiating tobacco use at the age of before 15. For example, in Pakistan, we can see that those individuals who were born in the ages 1980 to 89, 8.08% initiated tobacco use. However, at the age of before 15. However, in the recent years, in those born between 1990 to 1999, 38.56 initiated tobacco use within this age group. Similarly, for India and Bangladesh, we can see that the latest trends have kind of jumped. However, what is interesting here is that while smokeless tobacco is what is being initiated at a greater crude percentage in India and Pakistan, in Bangladesh, smoking is still has kind of outweighed the initiation of smokeless tobacco. Similarly, for those individuals who are initiating tobacco use between the ages of 15 to 17, we can see that there is still an upward increase. However, it is being replaced by smoking in India as well as Pakistan, as most smokeless tobacco initiation has already happened by the age of 15. Now, in Bangladesh, that trend is still apparent, wherein smoking is still being initiated at a quite high number in the recent cohort. For smokeless and smoking tobacco initiation in the ages of 18 to 19, most initiation has already happened, and we can see there is kind of like a plateauing or a downward trend in the recent cohorts, as most population has already initiated by the ages of, say, less than 18 years old. Now in Bangladesh, there is still an upward increase even in these ages. This is a brief overview that I have gone over for the policies, and this, I mean, it's not possible to discuss this in detail as of now. However, what I have seen was that tobacco was previously treated in the early, early times of like the late 1990s. Tobacco was primarily treated as a cash crop or as an incentivizing or sort of as in a commercial product. However, in the early 2000s, we can see that it became widely recognized that this is something that needs to be controlled, and we can see most legislation has come up in the recent years. Now, if we talk about the primary laws or the landmark laws within these nations, India had the Cigarettes Act in the 1975. However, it was just limited to tobacco smoking. This was repealed, and now we have something called the Kotpa Act, which is the Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act. This was initially planned in the year 2003, and it is constantly being amended and more details are being added to the law. What is important here is that it specifically focuses not just on cigarettes, but also on alternative forms of tobacco, including smokeless tobacco products. And it does specify specifically how the treatment or how the distance between tobacco products should be outside educational institutions, which is important to prevent youth interaction at lower ages. Within Pakistan and Bangladesh, a very common trend is apparent wherein most of the laws are fixated on smoking, and smokeless tobacco and alternative forms of tobacco have kind of not been under the purview of this discourse. What is interesting here is that in case of Bangladesh, and I think this is something all countries can implement, they have specifically given out loans for the cultivation of alternative cash crops. That is, to a tobacco farmer, they have provided incentives to kind of diversify and go into cultivating non-tobacco products and cash crops that may earn them a good, sustainable kind of a cycle. This, I think, is very important when we talk about sustainable change, because alternative forms of livelihood often go ignored when we talk about tobacco banning. So to conclude, as we can see, smoking and smokeless tobacco initiation is occurring at lower ages, and the vulnerable population includes those individuals who are born, who are initiating tobacco use before the ages of 18. And women are especially vulnerable to this. The current policies do not specifically target early initiation, and these need to be strengthened further. The laws are further limited to tobacco smoking. Smokeless tobacco and other variants must be given specific attention. Further, when we talk about youth, it becomes especially important to regulate other forms where they may interact with society in terms of their exposure to OTT platforms or other social media, for example, independent creators like YouTube, wherein they can display and advertise tobacco products, and these often go ignored. COVID-19 itself presents a unique challenge for tobacco control, because early in the year 2020, we found reports of tobacco industry interference, and they released guidelines on how smoking can prevent and give you protective effects against COVID-19, which were later falsified and found to be and they were ratified. Now this shows that the damage was already done. That even though it was found to be false, the damage was already done, and it is very important to identify how this pattern would have affected the youth, and did that affect their initiation at all. Further limitation is that since the GATS does not collect data on for institutionalized individuals who are especially vulnerable, and details on migration status have not been scrutinized, wherein indigenous varieties of tobacco use have not been explored. The data is further on just self-reported responses, which may be subject to age heaping, especially in the case of initiation, recall bias, social desirability bias, as well as the responder and interviewer bias. Now, the analysis is based on cross-sectional data, and temporal relationships cannot be ascertained. Mortality and quitting has not been accounted for. Please help me improve this further and kindly reach out with your questions. Thank you. Over to you, moderator, please.
Thank you, Vanguri. Thanks for that wonderful and interesting presentation. Several times.
How do I stop this share?
You can stop at the bottom. There is a stop presentation option. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the advertisements related to tobacco in SAARC countries, especially with brand ambassadors, superstars as brand ambassador, often makes us wonder about its health impact. And as your presentation has rightly pointed out, this growing and important adverse health behavior in SAARC countries. Now, now let's move to the third presentation for the day. This is titled "An Analysis of Resilience Process: These Stimulus of Mental Health, Mental Strength, and Role of Community and Family Support Amidst the Civil Violence in Thailand." Over to you, Apicha.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I share screen?
Yes, you have shared your screen. You can see that.
Okay. Okay, you can see this.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your opportunity for me to present this study. I would share screen for you, but later on, I would spend 2 or 3 minutes to make some kind of introduction first. The World Health Organization in 2002 stated clearly that violence is a global public health problem. Among different types of violence, collective violence, including political violence, where power and force is used for political goals, occurring between and within nations in many parts of the world, can have vast effect on health in terms of death, illness, disabilities, and mental suffering. The effect of health can be long-term. Political violence with years of political and armed conflict in many countries was revealed to continue to be critical public health concern on evidence of psychological trauma. It was estimated by WHO that about 30 to 50% of people exposed to political violence will suffer mental stress, such as depression and anxiety. At the same time, researchers uncover the fact that civil violence may stimulate mental strength and give rise to resilience. According to the American Psychological Association, resilience can be defined as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant source of stress. And the gaining back of mental strength is determined not only by the biological or psychological factor, but also by social and cultural factors. The process of resilience is receiving more and more attention among researchers investigating populations in violence area across the world, especially in the aspect of different social and cultural scenarios. Prolonged civil violence may cause stressful experience and depression, but researchers also argue that resilience may be fostered through the support from the families and the communities. Researchers also identify ideology, solidarity, and social resources to be important possible protective factors against stress resulting from the terrorist attack. Researchers emphasize that as for the interplay between risk and protective processes in the mental health of war-affected population, one should pay attention to coping not only at the individual level, but also family relationship and resources, peers, and extended social networks, and the cultural and community influences of the larger social ecology. In some countries, survivors of terrorist attack benefit from collectivistic values, a sense of community and cultural resource in protecting depressive symptoms. Thus, resilience tends to depend on the bond between people and their social and political environments. Similarly, research defines resilience by focusing on the social and physical ecologies that play in positive outcome. The social ecology of resilience emphasizes family, community, and culture in the process of positive development. Investigation into psychology and ecology hypothesis and the importance of social capital and the community in the resilience process is still crucial and needs verification across different countries and cultures. This brings me to the presentation of the video here. Good day, everyone. My name is Abhishek Chandrapitiron. My presentation is on an analysis of the resilience process, the stimulus of mental strength, and the role of community and family support amidst the civil violence in Thailand. My colleagues also include Dr. Aksarapat Laktong, Dr. Ari Champaklang, Dr. Kathleen Ford, and this study is already published last year in Current Psychology. First, let me tell you about the effect of violence on mental health. It can be negative, and surprisingly, it can also be positive. Collective violence, for example, violence from political issues, has been occurring between and within nations in many parts of the world and have huge effect on health in terms of deaths, illness, disabilities, and mental suffering. On the other hand, psychologically violence may stimulate mental strength and give rise to individuals' resilience. According to the American Psychological Association, resilience can be defined as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant source of stress. And I would like to add that resilience is not only a psychological process. This is what we may call social ecology of resiliency. UNCA in 2012 explained the social ecology of resiliency as a process of positive development that could involve the interactions between school, in case of young persons, family, community, and culture. The theme of our paper is that resilience process is both at the psychological level and social level. The setting of our study is the three southernmost provinces of Thailand, having been under the civil conflict since the late 19th century. The objective of our study is to understand the psychological and social resilience mechanism amidst the prevailing civil violence in these areas. The data are from the longitudinal project on women migration and the unrest in the three southernmost provinces, round 2, conducted by IPSR, Mahidol University in 2016. The population and the sample, we include Muslim households with at least one woman aged 18 to 59 years. The sample size is 1,530 respondents, that is 762 females and 768 males. The key variables in our study are the resilience process, which include the emerging mental strength and the happiness level. And we have the variable on the occurrence of civil violence in village, community support, family support, and we also have the demographic and socioeconomic status as the control variables. And the analysis we use is the structural equation modeling, or SEM. This is the result from the structural equation modeling. At this point, may I explain, spelling out the variables used here. First, this is the violence in the community. This violence community is, the data is from asking the villagers whether they experienced any violence in their village in the last 1 or 2 years. The violence can be from the military crackdown or from the unrest, from the village unless which can be in the form of the bombing in the village, or it can be the fighting, the battle between the military and the villagers. The mental strength is from 3 variables. We have the ask the question on you can cope with difficulties that are hard to resolve. You are sure you can control your temper in case of emergency events. You are sure you can face difficult life events, and we rank this scoring from 1 to 4, not at all to very much. For the happiness score, it is the self rating 0 to 10. The lowest are not at all happy and the highest level of happiness. The community support is from the questions on 4 questions. Having friends or others to support when needed, feeling secure for your property when staying in this community, being confident that the community is safe, and there are the supportive community agencies to help during difficult times. And for the family support from 3 questions, whether you're feeling secure when living with the family, trusting in the family, caretaking when sick, loving and bonding in family members. And we also have the socioeconomic control here. The result, as you can see, once violence occurs in the community, the community support can increase the mental strength, and the family support would raise the mental strength as well as the happiness level. Violence in the community, of course, reduce happiness. But at the same time, violence in the community also puts up the mental strength. It makes people feel stronger. This relationship is at the value of the p-value of 0.05. From this analysis, we can conclude that firstly, males are found to be more tolerant of the situation than females. Secondly, household wealth is more likely to support individual happiness. Thirdly, family support is a significant protective factor for better mental health, included both mental strength and happiness. And number 4, community support plays a major role in coping with difficulties, but not directly to happiness. Our study confirms that the occurrence of civil violence in village naturally reduces individuals' happiness. But at the same time, this hardship generates a reactive force, stimulating mental strain at individual level. This is the psychological process of resilience. However, as it is shown that the community and the family support are consistently very important, we then still need policy to support strong family function and community capacity in order to induce overall mechanism of individuals' resiliency. This is according to and evidently supporting the theory of social ecology of resiliency. However, our study has limitations. Cross-sectional data has to be integrated carefully on the analysis of the causal relations. The measurements of self-reported information are subjective and may be difficult to verify. But research in the future must take into account the twin process of psychological and social force when we study the mechanism of resilience, the psychological and social process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay. This is a very interesting aspect that a negative aspect in the community, such as violence, is actually in turn creating a positive aspect in terms of resilience, and that's an interesting aspect that we could talk more later. And now let me move to the next presentation today. This is titled "Psychosocial Support Psychosocial support is indispensable to cure cancer patients. Experience of patients across India." This presentation is by Mansi. I think Mansi is not here, so maybe we will have her presentation played here.
Hello, good morning and good evening to one another. Myself, Dr. Manasi, happy to present a very interesting paper written in joint collaboration with Ms. Ruby Aluwalia, who is the founder director of Sanjeevani Life Beyond Cancer in Mumbai. The paper entitled "Psychosocial Support is Indispensable to Cancer Patients, Experiences of Patients Across India." The context of cancer care, as we all know, in India is characterized by high incidence rate, late detection, and lack of access to affordable quality care, resulting in elevated mortality. Medical treatment still remains the only dependable line of treatment. Unfortunately, the need of psychosocial support to deal with this life-threatening and traumatic illness still remains completely ignored. There are very few studies to assess this particular need in the domain of social sciences in the country. And so this paper, which is based on the direct interaction with almost 350 cancer patients across the country, where Sanjeevani is operational, is thus an attempt to fill this existing need. It clearly brings out the need of psychosocial support to these cancer patients, and it has been enunciated by 350 patients themselves across the different centers in the country. Basically, the entire paper is the study is based on primary data, which has been collected using scientific and robust qualitative quantitative techniques across 4 major states in India: Gujarat, Rajasthan, West Bengal, and Maharashtra. And Sanjeevani Life Beyond Cancer is relentlessly working since 2012 towards motivating these cancer patients to fight this distressing illness. It provides psychosocial support. This support is provided by the counselors who themselves are cancer victims. They address their concerns, fear of spread, recurrence, isolation, guilt, identity crisis, and so many other problems, basically more at the emotional level than the physical. Thematic analysis brought out 3 major themes around the need of psychosocial care. First one being, the research cancer patients strongly themselves have expressed the need of psychosocial counseling and the impact it would have on their own medical treatment, continuation, and recovery. Even those with strong family support, the cancer patients express the need that they need somebody to share their problems with, especially at the emotional level. The third theme that emerged was the strong need to counsel even the caretakers, the family members of the cancer patients. Over 3/4 cancer patients express the prime need of provision of psychological support and counseling right in the hospitals. The qualitative data also brought out this fact rather strongly. The patients themselves admitted persuasively about the need of such a counselor, which would help them cope up, reduce their fears and anxieties. And according to them, they unanimously said such support is pertinent and must be made available in every cancer hospital. Despite good support from the family members, they said that it's always better and beneficial to talk to someone who is familiar with a fair amount of experience and knowledge and who can empathize and guide them properly. The qualitative data also brought out the fact that continuous support and counseling motivates them the patients to continue with their medical treatment. The dropout of cancer medical treatment is extremely high in India. All the patients unanimously reported that there is somebody required to listen to them, for them to interact with and help them. And such support is really indispensable. Provision of such clear and definite information about the disease and the treatment, they said, will certainly help all of them reduce their anxiety to a large extent and deal with the fear more. Actually, the family members bear moral responsibility of providing the emotional support to the patient, but they themselves get exposed to tremendous stress and anxiety. And it is thus very crucial to have someone in the hospitals who can help both patients as well as the caregivers. One of the patients brought out a very important aspect about the impact of counseling. We mentioned that if a patient's mind is strong and at peace, when he has somebody to turn to in the hospital, his treatment goes very smooth. On the other hand, if he is fearful and constantly under stress, the treatment does not have the desired medical impact, and it is very likely that the patients may lose the treatment outcome. When we started with this particular study, initially we conceptualized that all those who have strong family support may not need such psychological support. However, the data brought out a very new dimension. The patient said that it becomes extremely difficult to share this anguish and this anxiety with the family members, as they themselves keep getting more and more distressed. It therefore calls for a strong need to have a counselor around to share their anxieties and doubts more freely. Most of them also share their fear of relapse, hence the need to talk it out and share it with somebody. These psychosocial caregivers of Sanjeevani are actually far better equipped to empathize with these cancer patients, give them hope, strength to find the somatic illness, since they themselves are cancer victims. The third thing brought out by almost half of the cancer patients to provide counseling to the family members. Patients candidly find that family members struggle equally with the patient while dealing with this illness. And it is important thus to explain the various issues related to cancer, its treatment, so that the caregivers can better take care of them physically as well as mentally. In one of the cases, when the patient got to know about cancer, her son and daughter-in-law started keeping distance from her, thinking that they also might contract cancer. The level of myths and strong beliefs. After the counselor interacted with them, made them comfortable and understand, they realized their folly and they changed their behavior towards the patient. The patient then, with strong support from her daughter-in-law and son, could face the disease much more with confidence and strength than before. To conclude, as we all know, majority of the cancer patients do turn to appropriate medical treatment once cancer gets detected, but they are largely ill-equipped to deal and cope up with this traumatic illness at the psychological level, social level. The painful and challenging medical treatment protocol worsens these situations further. When we interacted closely with the cancer patient, it brought out a strong need of psychosocial support to fight this cancer, to make them positively help reduce their fears, their anxieties, instill back more confidence about their survival, and assist them in changing their outlook towards this seemingly fatal disease. Thus, the indispensable role of psychosocial support to cancer patients, not just enabling them to face this seemingly terminal disease better, but it also greatly helps in improving their continuity to treatment, leading to higher survival. Thank you so much. If you have any queries, do write to us to know more about this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansi, for that presentation. It really raises to this importance of psychosocial aspects, but also to the very old question of curriculum reforms within medical education. So with that, we'll move to the questions from the floor now. So I over to you, Diane, for taking these questions to our speakers.
Thank you, Arun. It looks like we have few questions here. So the first question is for the first speaker. I took the question from Sari Christiana to Ms. Nohan. Are there any alcohol and drug misuse policy to prevent students to consume them? Please, Ms. Nohan, to answer it.
Okay, thank you for the question, Ms. Sari Christiana. Actually, for the policy related narcotics is mentioned in the law number 35 in 2009 related narcotics, and for the policy to prevent, I'm not sure about the official or the policy itself, but actually Ministry of Health in 2016 launched Health Indonesian program that focus on the family approach prevention model that accommodate and focus education in the level of the family. Yeah, thank you. Maybe for now.
Thank you, Ms. Nohan. The next questions are for Ms. Pankuri Jain. We have two questions for her. First from Mr. Yudi Rafani from BKKBN. For Ms. Pankuri, thank you for your wonderful presentation. I wonder, are there any particular tobacco control policies in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan to reduce the first exposure of tobacco product among youth? And the second question for you is that on your last slide mentioned that smoking has been presumed to be able to overcome COVID-19. What caused this presumption and how can we overcome this issue? And the third question for you as well, did you study explore the sources of encouragement for youth under 15 to start smoking? Is peer pressure of them, and how prominent is the increases on the percentage of youth under 15 who start smoking in the last 6 decades among male youth when compared to their female counterpart? Would you please give us answer or comments? Thank you, Ms. Pang.
Thank you for listening so intently, UD and us. Now the thing is, the first question, where you're talking about the tobacco control policies in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Now, what these three nations have done so far is that they have given particular policies on creating certain areas as smoke-free zones. For example, educational institutions being one of them. Now, in case of India, 100 yards or 91 meters is the criteria that has been given, wherein no sale of tobacco is allowed within these zones. And every point of sale has to give a specific hoarding that individuals who are above the age of 18 are only allowed to use tobacco, not those under those. They're not allowed to sell it and they're not allowed to consume it. Similarly, for Bangladesh and Pakistan, Bangladesh has a similar criteria of 100 meters, that areas around educational institutions within a radius of 100 meters are not allowed to sell tobacco. And for Pakistan, that range is 50 meters. Now, I'm not aware of the latest legislation with any changes because I don't think literature on those have come out so far. However, within my institution, we are working on developing the legislation of India, wherein the latest Cigarettes and Tobacco Products Act is being modified, wherein the language becomes clearer. And we're trying to target the youth specifically, wherein the term yards is being changed to meters, and the age of tobacco initiation is being pushed to 21 from 18. Further, we are trying to do more community engagement and reach out to institutions on our end. However, no institutionalized program as such is available for those. Now, I hope that answers your question. For us, thank you so much for listening. The first question that you asked me is that whether how smoking has been linked to COVID-19. So in the past year, we've all had massive confusions about how COVID-19 interacts and how literature has been very scattered in that sense. As more literature is coming up, we are having a clearer idea. In the early months of April and May, when COVID-19 was at its surge and massive confusion was around, a lot of reports came in where it was said that if you smoke COVID-19 will not pass through the nasal passages and you will not get affected with the infection. I will further link those studies if I'm able to find them as of now. Now, these were later removed and they were, they were completely removed from the journals and they were taken back and statements were released. However, this second part of it, where statements were released on it not being true, might not have reached out to the audience as such, because by then a lot of literature had accumulated. And people may have this assumption within their belief system that smoking can prevent COVID-19. So that is an issue I think we need to tackle separately. Now, this presumption, I think, came across through tobacco industry interference because they found an opportunity because people were becoming more aware about their health and they wanted to take better care of their respiratory health in particular. So they would have seized this opportunity to kind of, I don't know, capitalize on this, confusion. So further, you asked me if the study explored the sources of encouragement of youth and how they initiate. Now, the data was completely used from a secondary survey. So these little, nuances of how tobacco initiation begins is not being taken under the study. However, I am separately working on a project which is trying to understand tobacco use within those women who are currently pregnant or women who are in the ages of 15 to 18 specifically, how they initiate tobacco and how it links to intergenerational linkages. So that's a very interesting point. I completely agree. It is very important to explore these patterns of initiation because then only can we identify interventions to tackle them. Peer pressure, from my preliminary studies, is definitely one of them. Your circle and your social background really determines how you, the historical substance use patterns. Now, when you ask me how prominent is the increase on the percentage of youth under 15 who start smoking in the last 6 decades, I can give you a few data sets from my study itself. Now, within India, smoking patterns, 31.99% of women initiated smoking before the age of 15 as compared to 21.87 men. So we specifically know women are more vulnerable. Similar patterns are seen in smokeless tobacco where a higher percentage of women are initiating use before the age of 15. And even within the ages of 15 to 17 as compared to men. And men have a plateau wherein the patterns of initiation are throughout the lifetime. Thank you so much for listening to me. Please reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you. Back to the moderators.
Thank you for your wonderful response, Ms. Pangkuri. Now we return to the third speaker, a question from Wina, Jawa Tengah. Based on your research, is there any particular strategy to conduct psychological and social resilience mechanism to prevent civil violence, especially in COVID-19 outbreak? Please, Mr. Apikat.
Hello. I'm sorry, I cannot hear the question again, please.
Okay, I repeat it. Based on your research, is there any particular strategy to conduct psychological and social resilience mechanism to prevent civil violence, especially in COVID-19 outbreak? The question is from Wina.
Yeah, we don't know yet about the impact of the COVID in these 3 southernmost province in Thailand. Usually the spread of the COVID would not be as serious as other places because of these 3 provinces kind of the remote area without much of the activities, the province across that is where they have a lot of migration in the border. That is when the COVID the spread is dangerous. But in these 3 southernmost province, right now it's not that serious of a problem. These are the 3 provinces here are the majority of the Muslim people. As you know that 95% of the population of Thailand is Buddhist and only 4% is Muslim. but the three southernmost is the majority is the Muslim. Most of them is in these three provinces. It's a very peaceful area, and poor in comparatively poor area. Not much of activities. There are some migration from this area to Malaysia, but it's not a lot of problem with the COVID. That one, the migration in this stream of migration has to be stopped, but that is not affecting much of the situation, the COVID situation is in this area. From my study, the importance of the community is very important. Whatever program to do, it has to be at the family level and community level program, which because of there is a political values or the solidarity values among this area, and it's a very good human capital in this sense. So, but it has to be sensitive when the program go in. Has to be from bottom up, and it should be community positive idea. Right now, the government has to make the military has to be very careful on using not the political means, but not the military means, but some more political and open the dialogues with them. That is the situation right now. But in the past, it has been very bad. In the last 20 years, casualty is 6,000 people die. During this area in this area in the last 20 years. And the solution has to be the dialogues. Yes.
Thank you, Prof. Afrikat. Now we return it to speaker number 1, Ms. Nohan. We have a question for you from Ridwan Nugraha. Alcohol consumption in some areas in Indonesia might be normal because it could be part of the local culture. Any thoughts of this issue which related to your study? Would you please give your comment about this? Thank you, Ms. Nohan.
Okay, thank you for Mr. Ridwan Nugraha for the question. In our study, we actually mentioned that in the discussion, we actually mentioned that alcohol consumption related with the cultural issue. So that's why the findings of the alcohol consumption is quite higher. But we can come back to the objective to this study that we only examine the factor associated with the family characteristic and not examine or control the socio-cultural factors. And whatever the factors, early alcohol consumption lead to the negative impact for the adolescent. Maybe some recommendation that we can suggest that we can say that maybe the local government can release local policy to limit the age of the alcohol consumption in the area that the area are normal to this kind of tradition. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful response. The last question is for the second speaker, Ms. Pangkuri again. Such a wonderful, from Anantalia, such a wonderful presentation and topic to be discussed. It cannot be denied that children are the most vulnerable group of population who will suffer the impact from the conflict for a long term. To your expertise, what is the best strategy for community and family in order to reduce the adverse impact to children and to improve their resilience? Thank you. Please, Ms. Pangkuri.
And I think that question is
that question is directed to the third speaker.
Oh, okay.
Third speaker.
Okay. So so all the questions have already been answered, and now the Ms. Dr.
No, that question
yes.
is Professor
Yes.
Apichat.
Yeah, Dr. Arun, Dr. Arun, I believe you have some questions.
Yes, I do.
Yes,
But
please.
final question, that's for our speaker three, Professor Apichat.
Yes.
Professor
Yeah, thank you for the question on the children in the area. Of course, we also take the studies to to look at the adolescent in the village. They are the one who suffer a lot because of the conflict between the government, the military group, and the people. They are also sometimes be suspect as the unrest group. So they are in the middle. If you go to this village, you can notice the area that you don't know whether which house belong to which side and so on. It's very but anyway, to have any solution, it has to be community based. The military ways of solving the problem can be very dangerous and sensitive. And this government already know about this and are trying to do this also, especially the children, whether they go to the school, the religious school, or go to the regular school is an issue. Now the central government understand more of the religious school and try to improve the religious school instead of trying to prohibit that kind of school. So the situation is getting better, and right now, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the response. Now it's turn to Mr. Arun. Dr. Arun, I believe that you have some question for the speakers. Please, Dr. Arun.
Thank you, Diana, and thanks to all the speakers. And it was wonderful hearing the different aspects of adverse health from different parts of Asia. And as a moderator and as a participant, I'm really intrigued by the fact that several times we give thrust to the aspects related to families, community, social support, etc. in our resilience mechanisms when we discuss about adverse health behavior, which is quite different from what the kind of literature that we could see from certain other parts of the world. So that was kind of a recurring theme across several of the presentation, and it was wonderful that our session could really project these aspects into this part of the literature. Now, let me start with this extending this argument, and let me ask you, Nohan, about this. Your paper really was a wonderful paper, which really looked at how family environment factors are attributed and are a mechanism of resilience in alcohol and drug misuse among the youth. And it's also interesting to see that the aspects like parental support, parenting style, etc., are and parent-child communication, etc., are the aspects that you really underline. Now, extending to that, let me ask you about the other side of it. So, what about the aspects of family-related characteristics? Or what would be your comments related to the family-related characteristics or parent-related characteristics? What I particularly mean is, does the household income or the parents' education, what would be your take on these kind of aspects on the impact of so does the parents in education really have an improvement into their parenting style and into managing the drug abuse among youth? So what would be your take on this, about the family characteristics and their impact on alcohol and drug misuse?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Mr. Arun. For the family background, such as that you mentioned, education or maybe wealth index, maybe a social economic status, we actually didn't examine that characteristic because the first objective is focused only with the kind of the what we call bonding or family closeness to the children. So the characteristic that we have, because this is actually questionnaire for the student, and the information for the parents or background characteristic for their parent is not really complete. And even if there is the data, we didn't see yet about the relation of the characteristic of the parents to the kind of the situation. But we use the parents' education and parents' marital status in this analysis. Parents' marital status including two categories, marital or living together, or in non-marital status, which is the student has been asked that they now live together or not with their parents, or how is the parents' marital status right now. The result shows that maybe I didn't put in the slide, but I put the result on the full paper. The results show that marital status, parents who in non-marital status has higher risk to the drug misuse to the student. The adjusted OR is 1.57, but this effect is didn't see to the alcohol use. And about the parents' education, this is quite interesting that parents that have higher education, such as in college or university graduate, they tend to increase the risk of the alcohol use in the student. But the risk didn't see the effect in the drug misuse. Maybe it is also related with the what we call it culture, because in Indonesia there is some culture that it's kind of normal that we consume alcohol, so that's why maybe the effect is come out. I think that's all information that I can share to you right now, Mr. Arun.
Thank you, and that's very interesting. Very interesting. A lot of food for thought there. Let me now pose a question to our second speaker, Pankuri. Very interesting presentation. As you rightly mentioned, it's multi-fold increase among the youth in terms of tobacco, and very interesting data as well. Kudos to your presentation. But taking as a student of demography, I always when we always talk about cohort, we also just look into the other aspect, age and period. APC is what we normally talk about. So if you look at this period, your data collection period and 20 years preceding to that, this is actually a period when countries in the SAARC countries really had a big economic boom, isn't it so? So that means the period. So naturally, what will happen? There would be a higher savings or higher exposure to several other and savings also to get into these kind of aspects. So do you think that period level effects also have an impact on the earlier onset of tobacco among youth in SAARC countries? And adding to that, I would also like to ask you, several times we make this analysis and then we mention that it should be better regulated, whereas what would you suggest as a strategy? Is it better regulation of OTT platforms, of media, etc., or rather a better education, the other side, the demand side of a better education to the demand side, which is the youth? So a better education on the health impact to the youth, is that a better strategy, or is it restrictions and regulations on the supply side? But over to you.
Thank you so much. Very insightful thoughts. The first thing that you said that, we can see that there are certain periods with massive booms, and we can see that. So we're familiar that in high income countries, tobacco and all of these things have already, been saturated, and they are not being as, I don't know, marketed with that much force over there in those nations. And now the, low and middle income countries kind of become the bait, and the tobacco industry would try to convert these into customers. And that is why specifically the youth and the women in these nations are being targeted. And as you said previously that, we have more celebrity endorsements and all of these things happening within these nations because they're upcoming with that boom, and they're entering that stage where they have savings and they can, get into these alternative forms of recreation. Now, in that manner, I do completely agree that this is not, it's not a univariable. It has to be seen in terms of the social context and seen in the terms of how the population is responding to outward influences. The second thing that you said that, would it be better to regulate and make the restrictions, or would it be better to do education? And my answer is it has to be both. While we do have to make sure our youth is more, prepared and is able to make these intuitive decisions on their own, it is also important to come up with rules and regulations so that it's not possible to reach out to each and every school child, or it's not possible to reach each and every person within a nation, let's say as wide as India, or even Pakistan and Bangladesh for that matter, because we're not homogeneous. We are very different. A woman from, let's say, urban India would be very different from a woman, let's say, in a village living at the outskirts of a tribal belt, for example. So interventions are very tricky in order to reach these two populations simultaneously. So while it is very important that, let them make the advertisements, we will also do anti-tobacco advertisements. I completely agree with that idea. But for example, in India, they have this rule they're coming up with, I think Virtual Strategies is coming up with this rule. It's called the tobacco-free films. And it has this regulations in terms of how certain, when you have somebody smoking on the screen, that warning and how much duration they're smoking, all of these things need to be regulated. And it's very important to point these things out, these nuances, because it becomes very difficult to, reach out to each and every single child. However, when you have these regulations at a scale where people who are creating content are accountable, it will become an apparent issue which people will take note of, and it will strike their minds in a very intuitive manner. And maybe through these little, nitpicks, we can kind of come up to the conclusion that, okay, this is something bad, and it's a personal choice if you're doing it, but it should not be something that you portray as it is often seen in movies, as a stylish thing, or as something that all the people who are achieving success in life do. For example, you would be very familiar with the TV shows, somebody who's a very successful lawyer would be sitting in his office, sky-high building, and he'd have a glass of, whiskey in his hand and a cigar in the other. And that would be the definition of success that we portray to our youth. So I think that idea itself has to be changed. And of course, it's not something that can happen overnight. And I think all of our careers are based on, these little changes, and I'm sure that it will happen within time. But again, it has to be two-pronged. It cannot be just this or that. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think I've just started my career, so it's very difficult for me to kind of come up with solutions that, industry giants have been thinking about. But I do think that reaching out through communities and developing interventions at a local level, which are culturally appropriate and which people themselves are a part of in developing, would be the key to this. And it has to be at a small scale. It has to begin from there, and then it would move on to, from the grassroots to so it has to be the bottom to top approach. I definitely believe that. I hope that answers the questions. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Very interesting. And, absolutely, this is a lot of work to be done in this area, and very interesting thoughts. Let me go to our next speakers suddenly, and it's also nice to have a fourth speaker here. So we will direct questions to you also. Let me go to our third speaker, Professor Abhijit. And as we have seen here, there's a lot of interest in your paper. Wonderful paper indeed. I was curious about something, and maybe I can get some suggestions from you on this. The interesting part for me was that the negative happenings such as civil violence could in turn be a positive aspect into the resilience process. And this is something as an example we could see in several aspects in several parts of the world. But I'm also thinking whether which is more important, is the family support or the community support? Why I ask you is, this study is among Muslims in Thailand, sorry, more Muslims in southern Thailand, and so the community support is high, possible, or is it the family support? So do you have any comments that you could give to us on the relative importance on family and community support to the resilience process?
Thank you very much. I think your question is on to compare the family support and community support. Which one is more important, isn't it?
To compare, I mean, I wouldn't say which is more important, but
that is very good, because we found the relationship of family support and community support act differently. You know, the community support directly have an effect on the mental strength. They give the power, empower the people, mental strength, but not directly to happiness. But family support can give the individual direct happiness and mental strength too. But community support only mental strength, not happiness directly. So because of if you have to make decision on the family support or community support, I would say family support is the priority. That is most important, because it's also soothing you, making you stronger, and also helping you to be happy. But the importance of community support is also important too.
Thank you. That's well put, and you know, for youngsters like us, it's a good food for thought to even look at issues in future in this context. Now, before that, let me move to moderator 2, because we have a speaker 4 here now. Can you ask the question that's on the chat for our speaker 4?
Yes, we have a question for speaker 4 from Ms. Anindita. Very interesting study. Did you find any difference on mental health support for patients who has different type of cancers? Please, Mrs. Manasi Baudekar.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning and good afternoon. Extremely sorry for joining in late. Had some other very urgent priorities to attend. Very interesting question. Majority of my cancer patients were breast cancer patients. Across the type of cancers, there was not very much difference. The variation was more or less same. However, the patients with relapse of cancer, second and third time relapse of cancer, they showed extremely high requirement of psychosocial support. And that is what has emerged very clearly from the findings. I hope I've answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful response. Back to Dr. Arun, please, Dr. Arun.
Thank you, Professor Mansi, and wonderful that you could join us. You know, it was nice to hear your presentation. But just building upon that question, you know, what would be your suggestion? What would be your take on the reformation of medical curriculum, or empowering younger doctors with the psychosocial aspects when they consider cancer patients?
Absolutely valid question, Arun. It is extremely critical to empower, to sensitize the medical fraternity also. It's in India, particularly, the load is too much. Per doctor, they just can't give adequate time to each patient. However, whatever time they get, if they could help the patient and provide some positive psychosocial support, it means a lot to the patient. So along with the medical fraternity, there should be counselors, well-trained counselors placed at every cancer hospital and every other hospital also, wherein cancer patients usually go first time. So that, the fear and the anxiety with which they go is tremendous. The trauma is tremendous. And the moment they see somebody who is there to help them, it reduces their anxiety to a very large extent, and they get mentally prepared to face whatever comes up as a part of their routine protocol or routine treatment. So I would strongly recommend
both the medical fraternity as well as other outside counselor support for all the cancer patients in each and every hospital.
Thank you.
Thank.
Yes. Do we have any more questions?
I think we don't have any question on the chat box, Arun.
Okay. So that does leave us some leeway for some discussion. So any final comments from any of our speakers? I open to you. So one of the things that I as I was mentioning earlier, one of the things that I found is this: when we really talk about adverse health behavior, one thing that we really have different from Asia is this thrust on familial, community, and social aspects of resilience. And it's also interesting that every study, every presentation that we had, on one hand, when we talk about the adverse health behavior, on the other side of it, we are talking about resilience and with a thrust on these family, social, community aspects. So maybe that's one message that we could all take out from this session. So if we do not have any further questions, I guess we should wind it up. So I am extremely, it was a great pleasure for me to moderate this session. Thanks to this, thanks to APA for this opportunity, and thanks to all the presenters, all four of you, and all your collaborators for the wonderful papers. And also a big thanks to my co-moderator for helping me out with everything, Diane. And yes, so enjoy the rest of Asian Population Association Conference, and see you soon, hopefully somewhere non-virtually. Have a nice day.
Arun, the committee said to me that we have a photo shot session before ending this session. For all the participants, please turn on your video, because the committee will take your photo for the documentation. And smile. Okay, I think it's already enough. Thank you all for your wonderful presentation, and thank you for Dr. Arun for joining with us, and thank you all the participants. See you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.